what's going on everyone? This is Kiodiekin. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video review, we're going to take a look at the brand new Raspberry Pi 5. Now, a lot of the footage that you will see in this video was recorded back in late November of 2023. I had to kind of push back on the initial review simply because I got tied up into helping process and also getting some of the RetroPie development going on, and I didn't want to forget about this particular topic, which is my initial review and kind of my assessment about the Raspberry Pi 5. Now, just to kind of do a quick recap, the Raspberry Pi 5 is the brand new Raspberry Pi board that is offered by the Pi Foundation. As you guys know, they've been on a hiatus since around 2019, which is the last time they came out with the latest reversion board, which was a Raspberry Pi 4. Now, if you are planning to get or if you're looking to upgrade going from a Raspberry Pi 4 to a Raspberry Pi 5, then this is probably the best option for you because it does offer more power, a little bit more flexibility in terms of driver integration, and honestly, all in all, for an additional $5 cost, it makes perfectly good sense. With the Raspberry Pi 4 entry level at the $55 range, is costing somewhere about $55, and now going with this is now only $60. So just as a quick recap, in this video we're going to go over the recommended specs or hardware that you should purchase along with your Raspberry Pi 5. We're going to take a look at all the specifications. We'll take a look, or at least speak on a little bit of emulation, since I've been doing a lot of that here on the channel, as well as going forward we will be doing or covering some initial reviews and comparisons with some of the other single board computers on the market. But just to bring you up to speed, some of the newer features of the Raspberry Pi 5 includes the brand new RP1 chip. This is a Raspberry Pi 5 built-in RP1 IO controller package that they manufacture themselves, and what this chip allows for is a faster data migration for additional bandwidth that allows for faster transfer speeds directly on the Raspberry Pi 5. Now, the Raspberry Pi 5 comes in two different models. You can get the 8GB version or the 4GB version. Now, if you are just looking to use this for some of the minimum specifications, but you want a bump in power, I would personally recommend going with the 4GB model. It's only a $5 increase in addition to needing the new 27-watt power supply. However, the Pi Foundation has stated that you really don't need the 27-watt power supply, or you don't plan to use much of that unless you're doing a lot of overclocking and high demanding usage. You can get the 8GB model, which is the one that I recommend if you are going to use this for gaming and emulation. There are some things coming down in the pipeline where I don't want you guys to regret it later on, but you will need the 8GB version to take full advantage of emulation, which I will speak on at the end of this video, as well as several other videos. But as a quick recap, let's take a look at some of the specs that this board has to offer. The brand new Raspberry Pi 5 offers the Broadcom BCM2712 2.4 GHz quad-core 64-bit ARM Cortex-A76 CPU. It has 4 of these. This is a quad-core processor. It has 512 kilobytes per core with L2 caches and a 2 megabyte share L3 cache. It has a brand new Video Core V2 GPU supporting OpenGL, ES 3.1, as well as Vulkan 1.2. So those are some significant upgrades if you're using this for video editing, video conferencing, or even video gameplay. Has dual 4K 60 HDMI display output with HDR support, a 4K 60 HEVC decoder. 2 USB ports, also comes included with 2 USB 3.0 adapters as well. Before I go any further, the brand new RP1 chip, I definitely want to say that this is one of the hotter components on this particular chip, and I don't believe the active cooler really creates a situation for that. I don't think there's a thermal pad directly goes on that. It goes on the chip, I believe it goes on the memory, and then one of the other components on the board. So in this video I will be applying thermal paste to it, which has also lowered my temps, which we will cover that a little bit later as well in the video. Has a micro SD card slot, which is for your booting. If you guys want to either boot directly from USB or from an SD card slot, you can use either or. Has Bluetooth 5.0 as well as a dual band 8.211 AC Wi-Fi adapter. So you will get faster speeds, less interference with connections and things like that that are around you. The Gigabyte Ethernet port is pretty fast as well. Has two 2x4 lane MIPI camera display connectors. The only thing is they did remove the audio video jack from the Raspberry Pi 5, which is something that a lot of the devs are not too happy about. I know that is an audio port, but keep in mind, even when we had it on the Pi 4 and the Pi 3, we used a lot of that for video output as well as some additional data transfers and whatnot. So it wasn't just an audio port. You could also use that as a composite video out to your TV as well. 5-volt 5A DC USB-C power adapter. So you can use the one from the Pi 4. However, if you're looking to overclock as well as get some additional power out of this, you will need to use the additional $10 27 watt power adapter, which is pretty much the highest on the market right now. Most, as far as I know, no other single board computer requires this amount of power. Has a Raspberry Pi standard 40-pin header. You could put your fans on there, use it for GPIO, whatever other accessories that you need to. The other two new features that they added was a built-in power button, which allows you to shut off the Raspberry Pi 5 with the push of a button. You can also reset it from there as well. And it also has the real-time clock powered external battery, which you will need to purchase additionally with the board. So those are just some of the quick takeaways. I'll get into a lot of the other some of the other specs within some of the other videos, but those are some of the new takeaways to kind of get you guys kept up. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of my initial thoughts. All right, so we finally have our Raspberry Pi 5. Man, no, it's been several days, so that's what's been holding up a lot of the progress. I had 2 of these ordered. I canceled the second one because the company pissed me off, gave me some erroneous information, and so decided to get rid of that one, and then just figured I'd just source another one like at Micro Center or through another website. But at any rate, here's the Raspberry Pi 5 in all its glory. This has a quad-core processor. My understanding is we could take it up to about 3.1 gigahertz. As far as the speed, this is the 8 gigabyte model. There's also a 4 gigabyte model as well. We have 2 USB 3.0 ports, 2 USB 2.0 ports. We have our Ethernet connection. I've gone over a lot of these specs previously. This has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 5.0, and we also have our USB-C connector for power, and then we also have our mini HDMI outputs here for dual display. So the Supreme team members, the other guys, they haven't gotten aboard yet. So we will try to port over a lot of the stuff that we do have from the Raspberry Pi 4 and some of the stuff, the advancements we've made on the Orange Pi 5. In terms of performance, if it was not for the Orange Pi 5 and a lot of the developments that we made over there, we wouldn't be as far along as we are with RetroPie and gaming emulation, because there were some configurations or media players, things that there had to be adjusted for video scripts in terms of getting like your loading screens and splash screens working. So a lot of that stuff can be ported over to this because they had additional changes on the Orange Pi 5, which I think it was the Omics player is obsolete now, which was on the Raspberry Pi 4. I can't remember which one it was, but that's obsolete now. So you have that now on the Raspberry Pi 5. So a lot of the things that we incorporated on the Raspberry Pi, on the Orange Pi 5, can now be migrated over to this. So this has a lot of different connectors. If you guys watched my last video, there's a new Pi hat, which costs about $22, which allows you to add a M.2. This one doesn't have it. Allows you to add an M.2 slot to the device for additional media and storage. We still have our SD slot here for our storage capacity. That's where we're going to be booting from. I have a lot of plans for this as well. We also got a couple of MIPI connectors here. The one biggest takeaway for the Raspberry Pi 5 is that they did remove the audio video jack that was on here. That's actually a huge downfall. A lot of the other single board computers right now ranging within this price range have all that, included. And in fact, if you guys watch my other video of the UE2 X1 single board computer, even has a microphone on that. But this is coming in at 80 bucks. There's a lot of other competitors right now that are adding some of those additional features. But we anticipate this to be a gaming powerhouse. And I will have some subsequent follow-up videos in regards to this, comparing this to the Orange Pi 5, because that is the other single board computer on the market right now, which is this one, which a lot of people are talking about. So unfortunately, the Orange Pi 5, as we all know, the community isn't as big as the Raspberry Pi 5, but that is a gaming beast with that Mali GPU. But one of the things that I definitely want to test, I can't wait till we get our PlayStation 2 emulation up and running. We'll do asterisks. This is an 8-core processor, and so I was really shocked to find out that the Raspberry Pi Foundation went with a quad-core processor for this. The Orange Pi 5 comes in variants of 4, 8, 16, and 32 gigabytes of RAM. This is only 4 and 8. And hopefully they release a 16 gigabyte model, because if you guys want to get the best emulation out of this, you're looking at anywhere between needing 8 to 16 gigabytes. And some of you are probably scratching your head why I'm saying that. Most people saying that you only need 4 or 4 suffice, don't make any images or have any real plans with it. Trust me, you're going to need 8, hopefully 16. I don't think it'll really push it to 16, but you want to at least have 8 is the mediocre standpoint, because there's going to be some new developments that allows you to tap into further power and capabilities. You will need to have more RAM. So hopefully they come up with a 16 gigabyte version, even though I don't think, well, you'll need all of that. You'll probably need maybe 9, 10, 12, 11, 12, something like that. But yeah, we finally have it here in the Daikin household, the Raspberry Pi 5. I was informed that I placed my order 45 minutes after the announcement, and it seems like I'm one of the, I wouldn't say the last person to get one, but definitely on the back end of everything, especially when I've posted links and helped some of you other guys out there secure one of those devices. So considering that the Pi Foundation decided to go with a quad-core processor instead of 6 or 8, I'm wondering if, well, the way most emulators work, they only see 4 cores. They don't see 2, well, they don't see like 6 or anything of that nature. So this is going to be great for a single use application. Now, in terms of multi-core processing, the Orange Pi 5 is going to kick its butt, because there's no way you could do a bench test and get an accurate score in terms of how these two are compared. You will have to run one application on each of these and really see how they perform. So emulation is the perfect test for these single board computers. Now, there's going to be a couple of games I'm going to eventually run, not in this video today, because we got to make sure we got at least RetroPie or some gaming front end that's fully optimal to really do a good comparison test. But we're going to run Time Crisis 2 and 3. I have some video clips that I have stored up, how this one performs, to see if it stutters in the same place, and I'm aware of what issue may be the single board computer or which one may just be a simple emulation issue. So that being said, let's go ahead and get this thing hooked up. I'll have my active cooler. We'll go ahead and get this installed. And we have the 27 watt USB-C power supply. I tried to get one of these in black, but they were hard to find. And considering that the prices of these have really gone up, I don't think I'll be buying like 9 or 10 of these like I did the Raspberry Pi 4. So I'll probably get an extra one to waterproof. I've got another one on the way that's only a 4 gigabyte model. And then I'll see what else I can source. But I'm not buying 10, 11, 12 like I did previously, especially when you have other x86 Intel single board computers kind of coming out right now for roughly the same price. Because if you get this with everything included, with the hat and a few other accessories, you're looking at about $130 roundabout price. So let's go ahead and get this set up and get right into it. I have this thing is tiny, I wasn't expecting it to be this small when I first saw it. I still need to source a case. That's not going to be a problem. So I think what I'll do is I'll mount this on top of my Raspberry Pi 4 stuff. You don't need that. Now, one of the additional accessories that I personally recommend for your Raspberry Pi 5 is the active cooler. I know most people are picking this up. They're not treating it as an optional add-on. They are treating it as something that is required. That costs $5 in addition to the cost of the Raspberry Pi 5. Now, I did order 2 Raspberry Pi 5s. I got the 4GB model and the 8GB model. I will be buying some more to get some of the other devs up and running in the community as soon as I can get some more hands on them. But this isn't optional. This is something that you will need, especially if you're overclocking and doing some of the higher end gaming emulation like PlayStation 2 emulation for your Raspberry Pi 5. The additional cost, honestly, I think it should have came included with it. I don't think it should have been optional. It does help. The only thing that I have noticed about the active cooler is that it doesn't stay on all the time. And usually when you get to around maybe 56 degrees Celsius or a little bit higher than that is when the fan turns on and really starts to do its work. It doesn't stay on or really work if you're anything lower than that from my experience. Something else to keep in mind too is the active cooler is not designed to come off and come on multiple times. This thing snaps on directly to the board, and if you are planning to do something like that, then you may want to just use a regular heatsink, but this is more or less made to be a permanent fixed solution to the board. I mean, you can remove it a few times if you want to, but keep in mind the more times that you remove it from the board, if that is your intention, is that the springs will wear out just over time. So before you install your active cooler, make sure this is something that you definitely are planning on going with and that you're not trying to switch it out back and forth. All right, so before I go any further, I want to take a little bit of thermal grease. This is something I'm actually going to do to my Orange Pi. Just put a little bit of thermal grease right on top of this. In addition to the stuff that, there we go. Yeah, in addition to the thermal pads, just want to put a little bit, not much. Just going to put a little spot on there because that will help. That'll help make sure that the heat dissipation, everything goes the way that it should. Let's make sure this is going this way. Okay. So in case you guys are wondering why I'm adding thermal paste to my Raspberry Pi 5, I've been doing a lot of testing with the Orange Pi 5, particularly in regards to PlayStation 2 emulation. That particular chip, the RK3588, isn't really made to get hot or overheat, and you don't overclock that chip. And so I'm not going to take any chances here. We can overclock this Broadcom chip to 3.1 gigahertz and then 1 gigahertz on the GPU. So this isn't something I'm going to go back and forth doing. I'm not going to do my test and then later on apply some thermal paste. And then additionally, I've noticed that some of these thermal pads don't make full contact with the board. So we're not taking any chances whatsoever. If you guys aren't familiar with PlayStation 2 retro gaming emulation on some of these single board computers, you can instantly go an additional 25 to 30 degrees Celsius higher than you normally would than just using it with standard applications. And I've seen that even on the Orange Pi 5. So case in point for any of you guys watching this video, that is why I'm doing it. We're not taking any chances, and if you are planning on overclocking and running demanding applications, I highly suggest that you guys do something equivalent to this. All right, we're almost done with our full setup and installation. I know some of you had asked me about this in terms of how does the active cooler set in on the Raspberry Pi 5. And so it uses a spring-loaded mechanism where you can push through the screws through the bottom of the board, and then you just kind of screw them down and holds it in place. And then of course the power connector for the fan is on the board itself, closest to the USB connectors, as you can see. It's a pretty ingenious design. I wish they've used this on other single board computers that they've used in the past. It's definitely helpful, and it does help keep the Raspberry Pi 5 cool. But since we're pretty much already finished and set up, let's go ahead and get the software downloaded. I'm going to show you some quick and easy methods to go ahead and get your software up and running if you want to use this as a desktop, and then we'll go ahead and get it all set up. All right, so now we're going to get set up with our Raspberry OS for our Raspberry Pi 5. There's a couple of ways to do it. In fact, I use a program called WinDisk 32. You make a lot of images and whatnot with this. You could use this to write it if you guys are familiar with it. If not, then the software and information that I'm going to provide for you will also work as well. So what you could do is head on over to raspberrypi.com. You can scroll over to the software. This will help you get started and get your image fully set up and used for the Raspberry Pi 5. So you can go here for download for Windows. This is an imager program. You can install this, and then of course this will allow you to automatically burn the image directly to your computer. And then the other option is just downloading the operating system, and then of course you can image it as you wish. And so I'm going to go ahead and go to download here. This will allow me to download the latest version of Raspberry Pi OS for desktop, which will be the Debian version of Bookworm. So they released this back at the end of October. This is a brand new desktop with the latest drivers and everything that you guys need in order to get started. Let's go ahead and hit download. And once you hit download, you're going to be presented with this option that's going to say Raspberry OS Bookworm. So just go ahead and save it to your computer. And once you save it to your computer, you're then going to open up your disk program, which is this here. And if I wanted to write the image, I'll go ahead and save it so you guys can see the full process. It is currently saved to my computer right now. So let's go ahead. It is currently downloading and hit open. Now I've already done this, and so you want to make sure that you select the right drive that you want to use it to. Now keep in mind you can boot from either a USB drive or an SD card with your Raspberry Pi 5. So I have several drives here. This is the drive that I typically write to. Please, please, please make sure you write to the correct drive, because once you hit start, if you hit start on the incorrect drive, it'll overwrite all of your data. So once this is done, you can pull your USB flash drive out or your SD card, insert into your Raspberry Pi, and we will get booted. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so when you first launch your new Raspberry Pi image on the desktop OS, it may take a few minutes for it to update, as mine is currently doing. This should only take about a good 5 minutes or so before you fully get set up. And then it will set you through or put you through the prompts in order to set up your verified keyboard, which language you want to pick, and some of your other settings. You can also set up your Wi-Fi, set up your password, as well as other credentials here when you first start to set up on your Pi device. All right, once it's done, you will then be prompted to restart your Raspberry Pi 5. You're almost there. This doesn't take too long. This is kind of simple and straightforward. If you guys are following this channel or you have any type of basic computer knowledge, then this will be very simple for you. All right, and now we are booted into Raspbian Bookworm, the brand new operating system from the Raspberry Pi Foundation. Has a lot of cool features here. I will tell you that I did use this version on the Raspberry Pi 4, and let me tell you, it is a little bit more impressive in terms of the video optimization. And comparing the Raspberry Pi 5 to some of the other single board computers, even though some of them may be equal or more powerful or almost close to being equal to a Raspberry Pi 5 or a Raspberry Pi 4, you could tell the development and the drivers that they continuously add far surpasses some of the other single board computers due to performance, because they always have initial updates. I can tell you that even since I've been using the Raspberry Pi 5 now, since it's been a couple of months, they've added roughly about 50 updates a day. And even though the RK3588 chip on the Orange Pi 5 and the Rock Pi 5 is much more powerful, based upon some of my initial tests that I've been doing, comparing, let's say, some of the Nintendo Wii emulation and some of the other harder to run systems, the video optimization is much better on the Raspberry Pi 5 than it is on the Orange Pi 5. So optimization is key, and it is something that stands apart and sets alone the Raspberry Pi device. All right, so here we have our Windows booted up here. I'm just going to kind of browse around here, and one of the initial tests that I like to do on the Raspberry Pi device, I really want to see what the video drivers can do. I know we have the hardware specs, but there isn't like a NVIDIA or AMD website where you can really kind of get an idea in terms of what this chip can do. Now, I'm familiar with some of the other single board computers. They have all their specs laid out, but this video Broadcom chip that they have for the GPU is brand new to the market. There are no specs really on it, and so the only way to get an ample test on this is to just kind of get in there and fully test it out. And so after I fully initially set this up, I logged into some basic cloud gaming, and it was pretty impressive. In fact, you weren't able to really do this on the Raspberry Pi 4. I mean, you could do it, but it was very choppy, it was very laggy, and it was not an enjoyable experience. And so as far as the performance on this, I mean, it is really second to none in terms of the Raspberry Pi line. I mean, everything was fluid, everything ran great. I was able to get online, play some competitive gaming. There was no hiccups or lags, and so I was really happy with that. Now, as far as my default attempts while I'm using the Raspberry Pi 5, since I know you guys have seen me apply thermal paste, and I am using a different cooler that I picked up at Micro Center, my stock temps are roughly 28 degrees, and that is, I'll do a separate video on that. I won't add all of that to this, but my initial temps, I know that the idle temps on a Raspberry Pi 5 is somewhere between 44, roughly around 45 degrees idle, and I think sometime after you have it turned on for a good while or so, maybe a couple hours, you can easily get up to about 55 degrees idle, even with the active cooler. And so far as I know, I have one of the lowest temps that you've seen on the Raspberry Pi 5, coming in at 28 degrees Celsius, and when I've used it under use is usually about maybe 28 to about 30 degrees. Now, I have had the opportunity to overclock it, and overclocking it while I was idle, I was averaging about 31 degrees Celsius while overclocked at 3000 on the CPU and 1000 on the GPU. Nobody's actually gotten any of those tests. So I will be speaking a little bit more on that in regards to overclocking, best setup tips. My voltage was about 6,000. But so far, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I know I spent a lot of time with it, kind of going on over a lot of things and touching on particular topics. But again, I will make a separate video on overclocking, some of the best cooling solutions, why I'm not really impressed with the Raspberry Pi 5 case in terms of what I use it for, in terms of overclocking and running demanding applications. But all in all, the Raspberry Pi 5 is a great device in terms of upgrading it from the Pi 4. This is something standard in terms of more or less using it for desktop. I know that's the kind of direction they were going in with the Raspberry Pi 4, but it still wasn't there. But the video gameplay is great. I mean, being able to watch 1080p YouTube videos was pretty cool. It really didn't lag too much. The only thing I was kind of disappointed about is that Bookworm OS at this point in time did not incorporate 4K 60 frame per second YouTube playback. It only went up to 1080p 60 frames per second. So hopefully that's something they can integrate there in the future. I know with all these updates coming in, everything's changing pretty really pretty fast. I do know that the other desktop that is available, which is KDE Plasma, does support 4K 60 frames per second, and it does run it pretty well, and I will have additional videos on that. So, but all in all, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Stay tuned, make sure you hit the notification bell. I will have comparison videos with some of the other single board computers as far as stats and whatnot, and additional gameplay. So catch you guys later. You guys all have a great night. This is KDK Kiodiekin. Like and subscribe, and I will catch you later. Peace out. Bye-bye.